Good evening, everyone, and welcome to tonight's public information meeting. My name is Greg Newman. I'm the manager of planning with the City of White Rock. And I just want to start by saying thank you for spending some time with us tonight to learn a little more about this rezoning application. And it should be live now.
Okay, great. Good evening. My name is Patrick Mullen and my wife is Ainsley Winter. We are the applicants for the proposed rezoning. We'd like to thank the guests in attendance for their interest in the project. We'd also like to thank Greg Newman for organizing the digital meeting and Brad Dory, who's helping us with the concept plans. I'd like to tell you a little bit about ourselves. We're a family of 4 and have been living on the peninsula since 2005. Our daughters have attended Semiahmoo Secondary. My wife and I work full-time. Ainsley is a self-employed financial planner. I work as a project manager for a Richmond-based construction company. I've been in the construction industry for 30 years, and it's always been our dream to build our own home. As Greg has indicated, we're applying to rezone the property from RS1 to RS4. This rezoning would allow for a subdivision of the existing lot into 2 separate lots. The lot is 12,000 square feet, which would yield 2 6,000 square foot lots. Each 6,000 square foot lot would allow for a 3,000 square foot home. We value the beautiful character of the homes in the neighborhood in the area, and we feel that building 2 homes of 3,000 square feet retains the character of the neighborhood and better serves the community. It's not our intention to build a large 6,000 square foot home, as it would not be in keeping with the character and charm of the area, nor would a 6,000 square foot home suit our family needs. Just a topographic survey. So through the process of working with Greg on the rezoning application, we've had to provide supporting documentation. As the lot has trees and an old-time home on it, a topographic survey was conducted. This was to identify any protected trees, which are defined as trees of 30 centimeters diameter or greater. We engaged a project arborist to compile an arborist report and speak to the health of the protected trees and the implications of the construction relative to the trees. City Council and staff have a mandate to protect healthy trees. With this in mind, we are working with city staff and our team to come up with a design that allows for maximum tree retention. So let's go to the zoning map there, Greg. The zoning map shows the size of the lot relative to neighboring properties, and the desired RS4 zoning is evident in many other parcels within the zone map. What we're proposing is the same as what is already in place in the neighboring streets. And then just the elevation drawings there, Brad. In conclusion, it's our intention to build 2 lovely homes and reside in one of them. We are not a developer trying to come in and do a quick build and flip the property. Or, like I mentioned, we couldn't see ourselves living anywhere else. The quality of life on the peninsula is great. It is our desire to retire here. We want to build 2 quality homes that suit the area. Thank you very much for your interest in the proposal, and we're happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Patrick and Ainsley. And thanks, Brad, for navigating. I just want to confirm before we go into the question and answer segment that people could see the introduction that I had provided. Just I did get one message that someone wasn't seeing the share screen that I was offering, so not sure if we have 12 attendees in the room right now, if anyone can confirm that they saw the orientation. I just want to make sure that everyone's aware of the trees in this slide that is being shared right now. It does illustrate the proposed homes relative to those trees. So We may have time to go through the presentation again, but I think in the interest of time and respecting those in attendance, respecting their time, we can open it up to questions. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to very quickly, Brad, share my screen again, or hopefully share it. So hopefully, can you see that, Pat and Brad?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So those that are participating tonight should hopefully be able to see a little caption bubble with a question mark in it. So if you click that caption bubble, it'll allow you to provide your comments in writing just by typing them in. And then as we get them, I will read them out. I will then publish them, and either myself or the applicant will respond. I would also just want to note at this point that there is an online comment form. So if you have some thoughts, or if you have a longer series of comments or questions that you'd like to pose, I would encourage you to complete the comment form. If you go to that link that's on the screen, it's whiterockcity.ca/calendar. If you go to that link and you go to today's date, you'll find event details for tonight's meeting. And within there, you'll find a link to a digital feedback form. So if you would like to provide comments or something else comes to mind after the meeting, we'll have the comment forms available until March the 29th, which is Monday. And as I mentioned, you can also send comments direct to myself. So with that, I'm going to stop sharing my screen and turn it back to Brad if you would like to reshare perhaps the site plan.
There we are. Are you able to see it?
Yeah. And I am seeing some comments where people, they weren't able to see, I guess, what I was sharing earlier. So perhaps, okay, I think what I'll do is, we do have a bit of time. I'm going to go through my introduction very briefly again. I do apologize to those that that were not able to see it.
I can withdraw my presentation. Put yours up. Yeah. Okay.
Sure. Yeah, that's great. So you guys can see that now?
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
I can see it.
So just, I'll try to be brief in the event that it did go through, but it's tonight's meeting is to discuss a zoning bylaw amendment at 15733 Thrift Avenue. The purpose is to receive your feedback. The meeting is being recorded. The subject property is on Thrift Avenue, just northwest of Parker Street. You can see there, it's highlighted in the image. And I did want to point out the parcel fabric around it. It is a larger lot than what you see in the immediate context. It's designated mature neighborhood in the official community plan. Within the mature neighborhood, the OCP looks at opportunities to support single family homes, duplexes, and in some cases triplexes. The application tonight that we're talking about is to rezone the property from the RS1 zone to the RS4 zone, and you can see a snapshot there of the standards and how they differ, the key difference being the lot width requirement. And if this were approved, it would enable a subdivision. One other thing that we're looking at is the potential for CD, a comprehensive development zone, which would be a property specific zone to enable us to put property specific standards in place that would help to preserve some of the protected trees. And this image illustrates the trees that are subject to the city's tree management bylaw labeled 1 to 10. The darker circles around the trees reflect those trees that we're working with the applicant to retain. Trees number 2 and 3 are fruit trees and would not be considered to be of high value for longer term retention. Lot 4, or tree number 4, is of a similar nature in its current state. But the other trees are ones that we are looking to preserve through potentially property specific zoning changes. The green trees at the back there that you can see on the north side of the image are potential replacement trees, and I think that's something that we'd certainly be looking at a little further with the applicant to make sure that that particular layout or an alternative layout is feasible. So with that, I'm going to stop presenting, and I think we'll start to take some questions, and hopefully people were able to see it that second time around. So, and I'll share your screen again there, Brad. Thanks. So we're open to receiving questions if anyone would like to pose a question, and maybe we can use the questions as an opportunity to speak to specific slides as well. I have one comment here, and so I'm going to read it and then I'll publish it so that everyone can see it. The commenters notes that their concern is the lack of parking in the area, with the Parker and Lee streets intersecting with potentially 4 families and 2 new units. So 4 parking slots are really not sufficient. Street parking on the corner of Finley and Thrift is horrific after development. I would think there would need to be at least 8 parking spaces total, I guess, 4 per lot, 2 per unit. So the assumption being that there is the primary unit and then a secondary suite within each of the new dwellings. Unobstructed parking spots, so 8 unobstructed parking spots in total to minimize road parking issues. Want to ensure that will not be required to get residential parking decals in that area. I will just say, from the perspective of the city as it relates to zoning, each new single family home would be required to provide 2 parking spaces for the principal unit and then 1 additional space if there's a secondary suite proposed. So the requirements of the bylaw would be that there are 3 spaces per new lot, or at least per lot. So 6 total, but I'm not sure Brad or Ainsley or Patrick, if you wanted to add to that.
Yeah, just the way the homes are oriented, they're pushed further back on the lot, so that the driveways are quite long. So just the way it's situated right now, I don't see an issue with being able to support 3 per lots and perhaps even 4 without even going on to the streets. So that's what I'm seeing from this.
What is the what's the setback that you're illustrating there off of the property line on the front?
Maybe
we have 14 meters on the east house, 14.4 meters back from the property line, and on the west house we've got 11.86 meters back from the property line. To give the public perspective, required parking dimensions are almost always about 5.5 meters in depth. So we're looking at a full 2 parking spots, almost a third on this lot, 2 full parking spots deep on the west lot. So relative to other single family developments where you might be up a lot tighter, like if you see the house 2 houses to the west over here, 15713 Thrift, that's got a much shorter front yard, as well as 15743 Thrift. They have much shorter front yards. We've got substantial depth for plenty of off-street parking. I think above and beyond the 3 spots required per lot with a secondary suite.
Thanks, guys. The next question does relate to trees. It asks, those protected trees will stay 100%. As I mentioned, and I do hope that those that are attending were able to see where I had flagged the trees. There are several trees, the 2 in the very middle, they're labeled 2 and 3, and tree number 4 are proposed for removal due to the condition and the type of trees. City staff are generally okay with those 3 trees being removed. The other trees, however, the city is working with the applicant to see that they can be retained. And as I mentioned, we are exploring right now the opportunity to do what would be a property-specific CD zone to allow for potentially some changes to the building envelope that would allow for these trees to be retained. But it is something that we're actively working with the applicant on. Pat or Brad Ainsley, if you wanted to add, please.
Yeah, so the trees that are showed to be retained are the large conifers. So it's tree number 1 in the northwest corner, and then it's the 3 trees down the middle, trees 5, 6, and 7. The 2 smaller trees in the middle, Brad, indicate they're fruit trees, and they're listed as poor condition. So they're borderline protected trees, and it's like they're ending near the end of their life. And the other one is listed in fair condition as the alder tree, where the garage is on the west home. And then the other tree that's in the southeast corner, looks like it's partway on city property, partway on ours, and it's a holly tree, which is listed as an invasive species. So it would be up to the city how they wanted to deal with that tree.
Yeah, just add on to that. The city does allow generally for the removal of holly trees without without replacement, as they are seen as an invasive tree. A couple questions recurring. I just want to make sure maybe we get to those ones next. There's some concern about rodent control regarding the existing structure on the property, and I suspect with its demolition, if this were approved, whether or not there'd be any controls in place. It'd probably be worthwhile as well, Pat, just to speak to how you might pursue the actual demolition. I know that members of the public have raised some questions in advance of tonight's meeting, just regarding the potential need for hazardous substances abatement. So I think it'd probably be worthwhile to speak to that if you don't mind. Yeah,
for sure. So we haven't seen evidence of rodents when we've been in the home, or not to say that there isn't. As far as with the demolition, the procedure would be like, we probably wouldn't be applying for a demolition permit for a while. We've got a fellow that I work with, him and his wife have sold their home, and they're looking for a place to stay for a year. And they would be residing there, and knowing his wife, she wouldn't be staying in a place that has any kind of rodents. As far as with the actual demolition, so the procedure would be, we get a pre-demo hazmat survey done when the home is vacant to identify any hazardous materials, and then with that in hand, we're able to see what's in there, if there is any hazardous materials, and to deal with them accordingly. Nothing is demolished on the home until the hazardous materials have been abated, and after they've been abated, they do air quality tests to confirm that that's the case, that it's you can walk into the home without a mask because everything has been removed. So at that point, you've got a home that is free of any hazardous materials. And typically what we've seen with when we do a demolition, in order to limit any kind of airborne particles, is we have water that would be sprayed over top of the home as it's being knocked down, that knocks down the dust. And yeah, it'd just be regular procedures that we would do to make sure that all our neighbors are looked after. And I know the property to the north has a pool, so I would contact the neighbors in the general vicinity, just to let them know the day that we're planning on doing a demolition. But that's demolition is a long way down the road there.
There's a swimming pool directly north, and there's a swimming pool directly next door on the east side. So we would make sure to let them know in advance.
Just some ongoing comments, dialogue about the concern about not being able to speak tonight. I will get to a slide when we start to wrap up the Q&A about next steps, and I do want to assure everyone that you will have an opportunity to voice your interest direct to council. So where we proceed from tonight is that we will be working with the applicant to address some of the feedback that we get tonight, in addition to some of the ongoing technical issues that the city is working with the applicant to address. Staff would then prepare a report that would go to council to present a zoning amendment bylaw for what's called first and second reading. There would then actually be a statutory public hearing. So I know that there's perhaps some frustration with not being able to speak directly, because it's often easier to speak than just to type in some truncated comments. But those that are participating tonight and those more generally in the public will also be given an opportunity to speak directly to council when this goes to a public hearing. But I certainly would encourage those that are joining us tonight to try to offer your initial thoughts and comments so that we can work with the applicant to address those. And the other thing I mentioned is we do have that digital feedback form. Again, if you're not able to navigate to where it is on the web page, I'm happy to send you a direct link if you want to email me at gnewman@whiterockcity.ca. I'll make sure you can get access to that form, and then you can provide a more fulsome outline of your thoughts, and we'll work with the applicant to respond to those. There was just a follow-up comment about the parking and the concern with if you have parking on the driveway, the practical reality is that people end up parking on the street because of the nuisance of having to play shuffle cars when they want to exit. I would just say on behalf of the city, or from the city's perspective, that the supply of parking as proposed would meet the requirements of the bylaw. And if there was issues of on-street parking, then I do appreciate the concern that this neighborhood may become a permit parking area, and that might have negative sort of impacts for people that don't currently have that constraint. So I certainly recognize that. Do you have any sense, Pat and Ainsley, and I know Brad, you're working on the designs, is there any thoughts to the size of home that you would like to build? That I know the trees are a constraint that we're working through, but
yeah, well, we're looking at 3,000 square feet based on the 6,000 square foot lots, but potentially the home to the west might be less than that because of the tree constraints. To speak to the parking, I think it's possible to, in the driveway, to have 2 vehicles parked in tandem and still have room beside on the exposed part of the driveway where vehicles could still back out and it wouldn't require kind of shuffling of vehicles. But again, I don't see us having 4 vehicles on each site, and I see there's room for 4, but that's my opinion and Brad's opinion based on how far the home is set back from the front. If it was the opposite, where it was pushed right to the front, then yeah, I could definitely see that situation arising.
Thanks, Pat. Another question asks, seeing as this lot is lower than the neighbor's lot, would retaining walls be needed in the build out of the site?
Do you want me to talk about that, Pat?
Sure, go ahead.
I don't see, like, in the quick grading that I've done across the south elevation here, we're definitely sloping from side to side, but I don't foresee having to propose any retaining walls based on what we have so far on it. I think we're going to come down close to the 81.13 on this side here. And the 2 houses will definitely sit at different elevations from each other on the site, but we'll stagger the houses on the site from an elevation perspective and should be avoiding retaining walls. Be able to follow the natural grade of the site.
Perfect. Thank you. There's a question about hours of construction and restrictions. I would just say the city's zoning or the city's noise control bylaw, for the most part, dictates the hours of construction activity, which the latest that construction activity could occur is 7 p.m. as it relates to the potential introduction of noise. And then the earliest it could commence would be 7:30 in the morning, Monday through Friday, and then 9 a.m. on Saturday. And I believe that there's sort of no excessive noise on Sundays. Question about the yard setback at the rear. Would the rear yard setback be 7.5 meters?
On the rear yards here, the tree number 1 on the west side here poses quite a significant challenge to the placement of the house on it. And that's where this house on the west lot, proposed lot number 1, could potentially be smaller than the allowable house on the site. And as such, again, with the trees, tree number 5 also, creating challenge in how we place the houses. So we've got the east house currently with a 7.5 meter rear yard setback. The house on the west, technically it is a 7.65 meter setback, but that is to the deck part of it. Tree number 1 kind of forces it forward, and then we have a proposed deck off of the back of the house, where the proposed deck on the other house is off to the side of the house on it. So the massing of the house for proposed lot number 1 would be, substantially further forward than that of the house on lot number 2, the east house. They are significantly deep lots, as you can see that the other lots in the neighborhood that are of the smaller width on them are shorter lots. These 2 lots here that are the still, larger lots sit deeper, so it does give us the opportunity to have more ability to place these houses and retain the trees that are on it.
Maybe just adding on to that, one of the things based on the feedback that we received in the earlier presentation of this application to the Land Use and Planning Committee, we are working with the applicant on looking at the eastern lot in particular as potentially having the ability to push the dwelling further north, potentially reducing that existing 10-meter setback as proposed, or that 10-meter distance, and in doing so allow for more of the structure to be pushed out of the tree protection zone of those larger trees at the front. It's just something that we're looking at right now. There's also something to be said for having some consistency in where the buildings are situated relative to the street. We don't want to push the house too far back that it sort of takes away from the streetscape, but we do want to make sure we're trying to preserve those trees.
Just add a little bit more to it. Perspective, the existing house is this outline here, so both houses are still, even as far back as they're pushed, still sitting further forward on the site than the existing house that's there right now.
A question here, maybe for you, Brad, is what's above the garage and what's the height?
The heights are, typical to, the allowables on them. It's 7.5 meters. Are we on the allowable heights on it?
7.7.
Yeah, 7.7 on it. So we're working within those heights. We'll probably have a bedroom above each of the garages. At this point, we haven't, fully hashed out the internal designs of the houses. We've just put together.
Sorry, Brad. I see the bedroom being pushed back and the really nothing being above the garage. So when you show your elevation on the left-hand side there on the,
here's like a little sketch rendering of
that. So there's really nothing too much on top of the garage. It's a flat roof there.
Yeah, it's a minimal amount of overage onto the garage. For the most part, the garages are open to above on it. They're just a single story.
We have about 25 minutes left, so we're happy to take any additional questions. I know there is some frustration with not being able to speak directly, and I do apologize for that. This is the format that we've been using to host these meetings, and as I say, there will be a future opportunity to communicate verbally to council. But if there are other questions that any of our attendees have, please feel free to ask them now. I will go through some very simple sort of next steps in wrapping up as we get closer to 6:30, but we have a bit of time if there are questions. So there's another question has come in. Can we have access to potential plans that we see here? And what I would say is the recorded meeting will be published on the city's YouTube page. You'll be able to see the plans there. But if people want copies of the plans, I can certainly provide a copy of tonight's presentation upon request. So feel free to send me an email, gnewman@whiterockcity.ca, and I can certainly share anything that's part of the public record.
Yeah, and as far as the plans go, the plans aren't anywhere near developed. That'll happen after we kind of figure how we can deal with best for tree retention. So everything that's shown is quite preliminary.
There's another question about, from the city's perspective, was there any lessons learned about the parking after development of the Thrift and Finley properties? I'll admit I've only been with the city for a year, and I think the comment there relates to the Altus building that's currently under construction and potential impacts to on-street parking. I know that the experience has been that the disturbance resulting from the construction activity and some of the challenges with accommodating construction activity along the boulevard has presented some challenges. I know the city has worked with the developer to try to provide some better construction support. So having, for example, tradespeople parking within available parking lots, even in some cases outside the city, and having them carpool into the construction site. So things like that to lessen the impact to the city streets, but I can't speak much beyond that. There's a question here, if you remove the northwest tree, will it affect the look of the other tree?
So the three trees in the middle, they're a cluster that they support each other, where their root zones and their branches grow together, and they're three trees that are separated. Whereas the northwest tree is a standalone tree. So as far as will it affect the look of the other tree, I'm not sure which tree we're referencing there when it's the other tree.
You want to select tree number 4, Brad? It's just west. Yeah, that one there. I wonder if that's the one they're referring to, but how it would affect the look of the other trees, I don't think that it would necessarily. Yeah.
And tree number 4 is listed in fair condition, and that's the alder. So that was the alder, and the 2 fruit trees are the ones that were slated to not be retained.
Another question was, will we be notified of the date of the public hearing and how will that be done? So yes, so all those that received notice in the mail of tonight's public information meeting will also receive notice in the mail of the public hearing once it's been scheduled. There'll also be an advertisement in the Peace Arch News for the public hearing as well. The way that we've been conducting them with COVID has been that they are live sort of Teams meetings broadcast by council through the city's live streaming service. But for those that want to be able to speak to the application, there's a phone number that you would call. You would register to speak, and then you'd have an opportunity to speak directly to council. So that's how that will happen, and then there will be notification mailed out to neighboring owners in advance of that meeting. Did you want to speak at all to fencing between the homes and maybe around the lot? And then it says between homes and neighbor, in which tree is encroaching the neighboring lot to the west? So perhaps it's an impediment to what would be a fence. I'm guessing maybe not tree number 1. Would there be fencing?
Oh, sorry. Yes, so we would like to put up fencing, and I know that the question of fencing and this tree came up when I spoke with the neighbors on all sides, and yeah, that tree has some roots that are growing along the property line, which makes it difficult to put a fence in, but the intention would be to have a fenced lot for both lots. So that's what the plan would be.
Okay, thank you. There's another question about once construction starts, would you have any sense of the timeline to complete construction?
Well, based on the homes I've worked on in Richmond, and with this it'd probably be easier because I would know what we would like, but each one would probably take 8 months to build. Right now, we wouldn't necessarily build both at the same time. We would probably build one, get into it, and then not sure what the timeline would be for building on the second one. But to build the first one, from the time we got our permits, we're anticipating around 8 months.
Another comment, we are the neighbors from 15743 Thrift, which is the property immediately east. And the windstorms and breaking branches are causing concern. Will the trees be kept, and who will be responsible for their maintenance if damage is caused? I'll just say on behalf of the city, we are looking to have the trees preserved. If you're referring to the 3 large trees in the middle of the property, we're looking to have those 3 trees preserved as part of this application, and they have been reviewed by the city's arboricultural technician as well as the applicant's project arborist, and the trees are in good health. I'm not an arborist, but I understand that some of these larger trees will drop needles and in some cases smaller branches, but the obligation of maintaining these private trees would be the future owners of the property, or the current or future owners of the property.
Yeah, so the 2 trees closest to the thrifts, they have a heavy ivy infestation, and I've spoken with our arborist about plans to get rid of the ivy, because the ivy poses a threat to the life of the trees. And so first thing I have to do is cut the ivy off at the bottom, and then the ivy dies above. and then at that point, I would get an arborist out to remove the ivy that goes up and to remove any dead limbs that were apparent. Because the concern is with the ivy, once it gets up to the top, it acts like a big sail with huge windstorms.
I see a question about, can the owners let us pool owners know the demolition date at least 2 weeks in advance?
It looked great as a ground cover.
Sorry. There's a question, can the developer let the neighboring pool owners know at least 2 weeks in advance of the demolition that it would be happening?
I'll answer that one. Absolutely. We want to be good neighbors. We are excited to move to this new place. We want to make friends. We've just gone around the neighborhood a little bit already, introducing ourselves, and we'll give you as much notice as possible. And maybe we could have a swim in your pool.
I'll just say the city doesn't have a notification, advanced notification process for when demolition permits would be issued, but certainly rely on being good neighbors for that sort of thing. So we have about 15 minutes left. We'll give the Q&A section another 5 or so minutes, and then we can, I'll provide a summary of the next steps. I know some people may be frantically typing their thoughts. Not seeing any comments. I think what I'll do is I'm going to share my screen again, Brad, and then if any questions come in the next 5 or so minutes, then we can certainly come back. There's another comment. Thank you for the clarification of the ivy and your intentions. Just worried because some of the larger branches have fallen from those trees, and the needles are, of course, just part of living near large trees. But yeah. Again, I think that it may be the reality, I'm just speculating here, but it may be the reality of the maintenance of the property over the past number of years. Just anecdotally and speaking with some of the neighbors since giving notification of tonight's meeting, I know there has been some concern with the maintenance generally of the property, so it might be good to have some new owners that are looking at opportunities to improve the condition of the site.
Yeah.
I'm going to try this again. I am concerned that when I've shared my screen before, it's not been working, so I do apologize to those for that.
I know. Where did it go?
So hopefully people can see that now. I'll try to make that full screen for people. Brad and Pat, can you guys see that okay?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so after tonight, we've got a good number of comments to consider, and I would encourage people again to complete those feedback forms. I'll just go back one slide. Again, if you go to whiterockcity.ca/calendar and you look up tonight's date or today's date, you'll be able to find access to a digital feedback form as part of tonight's event details. If you can't track it down, let me know. I'm happy to send you a direct link. My email's on the screen there. After tonight, we'll receive the feedback and we'll work with the applicant to provide what's called a public information meeting summary. So a summary of how they're going to respond to the questions and comments that you raised. Staff will then work with the applicant to prepare a draft bylaw, and then city staff will prepare a recommendation for consideration by the city's Land Use and Planning Committee. If the recommendation is supported, council would at their next meeting give what's called first and second reading to an amending bylaw, and they would recommend that a public hearing be held. As I mentioned earlier, public hearings would give interested members of the public the opportunity to express their interest direct to council, and it would be through a phone call in pre-registration process, just again in light of COVID. Following the meeting, council has the opportunity to give what's called third reading to the bylaw, which commonly has some conditions, one of which in this case would be the demolition of the existing home, for example, and with the concerns regarding hazardous substances abatement, we'd want to make sure that we include something to that effect if it is first determined that there are substances that need to be controlled. And then lastly, if the application receives third reading, the applicant may then want to pursue the subdivision application, and the project could then proceed from there. So I'm going to stop sharing again and just, we do have about 8 minutes or so if anyone else that's still joining us would like to ask any further questions or provide any further comments. There's a question, seeing as the new houses will be 7.7 meters high for yard space, if you go back any more than 7.5, it'll take away the neighborly look.
Do you want me to comment on that one?
Sure. Yeah.
I mean, the site with the trees that are on it definitively, poses challenges in placing these houses. The intent in putting together this graphic for you was to give the neighbors perspective on where the existing neighbors' houses are relative to where we're proposing the new houses on it, as well as being able to see the existing house on this site. I think if we were to go to a minimal front yard setback on it, we would be sitting, substantially further ahead of 15717 Thrift, which I think would be, sort of overpowering for them. So despite the challenges of the trees on it, from a streetscape, as we refer to it, we are kind of compromising between the fronts of the two neighbors on either side of it. That I think we're doing a pretty good job of, making it so they're not overpowering either of the neighbors, nor are they sitting so far back that they seem retreated. The original house is so substantially far back on the site. But yeah, I think we have some decent streetscape that'll come out of it. Yeah.
Great, thanks, Brad. So we'll stick around for another 5 or so minutes if anyone else wishes to ask any questions, and otherwise we'll bring the meeting to a close. As I mentioned, it is being recorded and will be published on the city's YouTube page. So if anyone knows the people that weren't able to make tonight's meeting, if you wanted to direct them to the YouTube page, it should be up next week for viewing.
Greg, can I add something?
Yeah, please.
Just on the rezoning sign out front, it's got my name and cell number. So I know this format with typing in the questions can be awkward, like you mentioned. I'm happy to answer any questions anyone that might have, or to meet them one-on-one. So I plan on being there this weekend, starting to do some yard work. So if you see me, feel free to talk to me as well.
Great, thanks for that, Pat. I see we have still nine or so people in the meeting. Just getting a couple comments in. I'm not sure if there's anything new that's, I'm not sure how that one just got sort of pulled back. There's a question, can the green moss be pressure washed off the side of the red house?
Yeah, so the lady that we bought the home from moved out today, and we get vacant possession tonight. So I'm going to be checking out the home, trying to get it ready for my friend and his wife that are moving in. So yeah, I've got a pressure washer that I haven't used in a while, so I could definitely take a look at that. Okay.
Okay, well, I just want to thank everyone for their time tonight. And as I mentioned, we'll be taking feedback. If you want to complete a digital feedback form, again, the link is on whiterockcity.ca/calendar. You can find tonight's event details, and there's a link to the digital feedback form. So please take the time to complete the form if you'd like to elaborate on what you heard tonight. And we'll be providing all the completed forms to the applicant moving forward, and a response will be provided, and both of those, both the feedback forms and their response, will form part of a future report to the Land Use and Planning Committee. So I just want to say thank you for everyone's time tonight, and we'll bring the meeting to an end.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.